In the year 850 AD, there was one city where the world's greatest mathematicians, physicians, and philosophers worked side by side in the same building. A city with hospitals, a banking system, and more books than everywhere else on Earth combined. That city was Baghdad. And almost no one today knows what it really was, or what the world lost when it burned. His name is Tariq. He is 23, and he has crossed mountains and deserts for 6 months to reach this place. Now he is on the Tigris, watching something on the horizon that does not make sense. He smells it before he sees it. Wood smoke, roasting meat, something sharp he has no name for. Then sound, a low roar from ahead. And then the sight itself. Minarets, domes, walls with no end, hundreds of boats, people on every dock shouting in languages he can identify and languages he has never heard. He had been told Baghdad was large. He had not been told it was this. He will spend his life here. He will find everything he was looking for, and he will watch it end. Why Baghdad was founded. To understand what Tariq was looking at, you have to go back 500 years to a desert, a river, and one man's decision to build the greatest city the world had ever seen. In 762 AD, the land along the western bank of the Tigris was flat and featureless. Nothing. But the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mansur stood there and saw Persia in one direction, the Arab heartland in the other, and every trade route in the world converging within a few days' ride. He had the outline drawn in ash on the ground and walked through it himself. 100,000 workers arrived from across the empire. Among them, a laborer from south of Mosul who could not read and did not know the caliph's name. He spent 4 years moving stone in the heat. He went home and spent the rest of his life telling his grandchildren he had helped build something that touched the sky. He was not wrong. The Round City. What that laborer helped build was unlike anything the world had seen. Al-Mansur's city was a perfect circle, geometrically precise, designed by engineers and astronomers, 2.5 kilometers across, double walls, a moat, 4 gates placed at the 4 cardinal points of the compass, facing every corner of the world. The message was deliberate. All roads lead here. At the center stood the Caliph's palace and the Great Mosque, visible from miles down the river. Standing inside, looking toward that dome, visitors felt something they had never felt before. Not just awe, but the certain knowledge that they were standing at the center of something. This was not a city that had grown. It had been willed into existence. Within 50 years, it had burst beyond its own walls. Baghdad had become not just a city, but a world. The House of Wisdom. Tariq had not come to Baghdad for its walls or its markets. He had come because of a building, because word had traveled all the way to Central Asia of a place where knowledge was not just stored, but chased, argued over, extended. The House of Wisdom. He found it 2 days after arriving and stood outside for a long time before going in. It was a complex library, translation rooms, observation deck. And inside, everywhere he looked, people were working. Scholars bent over manuscripts in a dozen languages. A man copying a diagram of the human body. Shelves rising higher than he could see, filled with manuscripts from Greece, Persia, India, Egypt. He picked up a single page near the door. The mathematics was beyond him. He set it back down carefully, as if it might break. Within a year, he could read it. The House of Wisdom had been built under Harun al-Rashid and massively expanded under al-Ma'mun in the early 800s. Scholars were paid extraordinary sums to translate ancient texts into Arabic, and the work was treated not as copying, but as conversation. Translators corrected errors. They pushed further. Al-Khwarizmi, working inside these walls, developed al-Jabr, the foundation of algebra. His name, Latinized centuries later, gives us a word every person who has ever used a computer depends on: algorithm. Why scholars came from across the world. What made Baghdad exceptional was not just what it produced, it was who it welcomed. In its libraries and evening salons, Christians sat beside Muslims. Persian astronomers worked alongside Jewish mathematicians. A physician from Byzantine Syria taught in the same building where a scholar from Samarkand was learning Sanskrit texts. Knowledge had no religion here and no homeland. It belonged to whoever could extend it. Tariq found his people. He was nobody, from nowhere, with nothing but his mind. Within 5 years, he had a desk in the House of Wisdom and students of his own. He never once thought about leaving. Baghdad at its peak. Walk through Baghdad in the year 850, and what you feel above everything else is life. There is nowhere else on earth like this. Not Constantinople, not Cordoba, not Chang'an. The Eastern Market stretches for half a mile. Silk from China beside Persian carpets, Indian pepper, gold dust from West Africa. The air is thick with cardamom and sweat and 100 cooking fires. A merchant from Cairo haggles in Arabic with a trader from Samarkand who answers in Persian, and somehow they understand each other because in Baghdad, commerce has made its own shared language. Fatima has sold cloth here for 20 years. She knows this street the way she knows her own hands. The dye seller 2 stalls down, the blind poet who recites near the gate every morning, the bakery that fills the whole lane with warmth before the city is even awake. The world comes to her. To her, it is simply home. But this is what Baghdad is in the year 850. A city with public hospitals that treat the poor for free. A banking network so sophisticated that a merchant can deposit gold in Baghdad and collect it in Cairo without carrying a single coin. Scholars mapping the stars with greater precision than anyone before them. Physicians performing surgeries that European doctors will not attempt for another 400 years. Fatima is selling cloth, and the blind poet is reciting near the gate, and the bread smells extraordinary. Almost no one pauses to think about how fragile any of it is. The Mongol invasion of 1258. They came from the east. In 1258, Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, arrived with an army so large that chroniclers could not agree on the number. The siege lasted less than 2 weeks. The last caliph hesitated, negotiated, and ran out of time. The city fell on February 10th. The Mongols tore out the irrigation systems that had fed Mesopotamia since before history began. They burned the markets, they toppled buildings that had stood for centuries, and they threw the books into the Tigris. Manuscripts gathered from across the known world, translated over generations, copied and argued over and extended, thrown into the river until the water ran black with ink. Then red. Then dark again. Tariq was old by then. He had known for months this was coming. He spent weeks deciding what to carry. In the end, he chose 4 manuscripts. Not the most famous, but the ones he had worked on himself, the ones containing ideas he feared existed nowhere else. He wrapped them in oilskin and tied them to his body. He walked out of Baghdad and did not look back. He never spoke about what he had seen. His students said that sometimes, without warning, in the middle of a lesson, he would simply stop, sit in silence for a moment, then continue as if nothing had happened. No one ever asked him why. Legacy and impact on the modern world. Tariq never returned to Baghdad. He settled further west, in a small room with a window that faced east. He spent the rest of his life copying the 4 manuscripts, making sure each student left with their own copy. He told them almost nothing about where the ideas came from. He died in that room. The manuscripts went on without him. 1 copy reached Cairo, another reached Cordoba, another through a chain no historian has fully traced, found its way into the hands of a mathematician in 14th century Italy who had never heard of Baghdad, who would not have believed if you told him that what he was building on had been written inside a library that no longer existed. He never knew. Most of us never know. The algebra you learned in school came from Baghdad. So did the numbers. The stars carry Arabic names given by astronomers who worked in the House of Wisdom. The word algorithm is the ghost of Al-Khwarizmi, still moving through the world 1,000 years after his city burned. Cities die, libraries turn to ash. But an idea, carried by one person across one river, can outlast an empire. Baghdad is gone, and Baghdad is everywhere. If Baghdad's story moved you, subscribe to Medieval Town. Every week, we go back to the moments that shape the world you're living in right now.